small business and microfinance loans. It worked when I did it with the World Bank on a global level. It could certainly work on a local level. The default rate on these types of loans was less than 1%. People just need an opportunity. I'd like to see a review of all of the county service providers, particularly the investment managers, so we can avoid kicking the can on our pension funds. Let's have investment policies written along with triggers for rebalancing portfolios when there's market upheavals like there's been in the last 45 days. I'd like to see clearly a transition from for-profit management of prisons. I find outsourcing anything that impacts someone's civil rights distasteful, and it's an abomination. I'd like to see a performance audit on all of the county departments so we could see exactly what we're up against when we transition from being the opposition party to a party of leadership. I'd like to see the county create an outreach office where we could educate constituents on various health and welfare issues, as well as financial literacy, student loans, educational opportunities. When I was a financial advisor with Morgan Stanley, I was part of a team called the Urban Markets Team. We went out and worked with nonprofits, their constituents, and their employees, and educated them on the dangers of, just payday loans, rapid refunds, and so forth. It works. People just need opportunity. And finally, I'd like to see the county create an SPCA. When I was chair of the finance department at Lansdowne, we were spending $30,000 in animal control, outsourcing it to Chester County. That is a material amount of money. And these are just a few of the things I'd like to implement. I'd love to talk to all of you in greater detail, and I appreciate your time. Thank you.
Yeah, my name's Christine Ritter. I think that most of us up here are going to agree that we could all benefit from the health department and from deprivatizing the prison. Like everybody else, I think it is wrong to profit from incarcerated people. But I would like to focus my plan for the transition, which really can't start when we're elected. It's got to be starting now. It's really got to be starting this summer with research and thinking about who's at the county and what we need to do to implement change. Because I see three things that we need to tackle, three fundamental things. We need to tackle the lack of accountability at the county. We need to tackle the culture of county government. And we need to get the government to focus on being a resource to the municipalities instead of dumping responsibilities on them. Accountability could start with something simple like an internal audit function. There really are no paid internal auditors on the staff of the Comptroller's office. Think about that. At the federal level, internal audits return an average of about $8 for every dollar spent. And we don't have any internal audit function at the county. Why? Because they don't want to be accountable. The management letters, which you can't get when you ask for the audit, they don't give them to you, have recited as a problem at the county for many years cash management. We've had a number of places where cash has been taken in. In the Register of Wills office, the now retired, the Recorder of Deeds office, the now retired Recorder of Deeds would take checks made out to him personally, and then he'd turn around and pay the county for the copies that people made, but there were no counters on the copy machines. So the question is, how much money actually made it back to the county? We don't know. We need to change that. I think changing the culture, somebody's already touched on the need to really create an HR department. We've got to know going in what parts of the leadership team need to be changed. I don't for a moment believe that there's any merit to firing anybody who works in the county, but there is a benefit to turning over some of the leadership who is entrenched and believes that they report to the Republican Party in Delaware County and not to the taxpayers of the county. We need a real HR function to train people who are there, and we need a real HR function to be able to post the jobs and recruit quality candidates. We, like the city of Philadelphia, have a residency requirement. So if we do something like bring back the prison, we've got to make sure all of the prison guards live in the county. That's going to take some work. That's going to take a real professional HR person. And we need to invest in our government and get our government to be a resource. I represent, as a solicitor, the borough of Rutledge. It's tiny, 800 residents. They've got a problem with recycling. The county has a full-time recycling coordinator. That person hasn't been of any help. It's time to change that. Thank you.
Hello again, Elaine Schaefer. In less than a year, we are going to have 5 seats on County Council, and we are going to be in control of the county. Now, this is really an incredible opportunity for us as Democrats, but it's also a really extraordinary responsibility, and we need to be able to govern from day one. Now, this is going to entail a lot of sweeping change in the logistics and the practicalities of how we run this government. But more importantly, it's going to entail changing the culture that we have in our county government. Right now, as many of you know, it is a culture of intimidation. The Republicans run the government. They rule through intimidation, and I'm sure many of you have your own personal stories of how that plays out. We need to change this and make it a government that is simply about the efficient and fair delivery of services that people need. It is that simple. So how do we get there? Well, the first thing that we have to do is we have to change management. You cannot change an entrenched culture the way the culture at Delco is in the government without changing the people who run it. Now, there are 2 things about that. Who we put in when we bring in new management is extraordinarily important, because the way our government is set up, the county executives have a great deal of influence and power. So it's very important that we get that right. And it's important that we take our time in getting the right people in there. And that may mean putting in an interim while we find the right people. And those people, what makes that management right? It is people who are governing for good government, and they should not care about partisan politics. We want apolitical people in county management. In addition to the management, and moreover, we need to change the logistics and practicalities. Some pretty simple things, like putting all of our financial information on the web. Everything, every line item of every budget, we need to know how our money is being spent. It's not that difficult. All it takes is a scanner. We need to make sure that our contracts are bid out publicly. We need to make sure that our meetings are in the evening when people can come. Not during the day, because it's more convenient for the department heads. This government should be run for the benefit of the people, not the department heads. And beyond those logistical, practical changes, there are several really important, longer-term, systemic things that we need to agree, and you've heard a lot about them tonight. The prison system, the public health department that we need, and the need for an open space program. All of this transition and all of these changes are going to be difficult and challenging. I believe that my experience in doing this before in Radnor Township will be beneficial as we face these challenges. Thank you.
So in business, there's a concept, really simple, maximize shareholder value. Anybody ever heard of that? In government, I'd argue that the citizens are the shareholder. The simplest way I can put how do we make a government that we're proud of? Treat the government the same way we treat our businesses, and let's begin to maximize shareholder value at every level. In education, I learned that 3rd grade is one of the most critical years, especially in a low-income neighborhood. And the reason being is because how they score on that first standardized test determines statistically whether they're going to end up in George Hill Correctional Facility. Why do we need to deprivatize prisons? Because everybody up here that has spoke is absolutely correct. There is a culture right now that is targeted for low-income children who can't read, so they can grow up, be pushed through a system that they can find themselves in prison, and then in turn make profits for the people who own the prison. A short Google search will tell you about the GEO Group. The GEO Group, a publicly traded company on the New York Stock Exchange, where they're mandated by law to maximize their shareholder value. And what that means to us as real people, they're mandated by law to keep those prisons filled. They have been continuously in cases of bribery and pay to play. We absolutely need to change the culture. But one thing I learned about changing culture, it starts from the top. I learned that firsthand in the military. Any unit that I went to where there was a prior leader that got relieved, each time when I had to walk in and change the culture, it was as a direct result of the actions that those leaders put in place. For far too long, the leaders in Delaware County has not followed the rules that they needed to follow. They have not maximized shareholder value. They haven't taken advantage of the fact that the number one way to cut crime is to give people education and jobs. Instead, they continuously defund education. They continuously give out jobs to their friends so that they can have economic development, while the average person in Delaware County suffers from all of these plagues that were systematically put in place. We need to maximize shareholder value in every aspect. We need leaders that are able to get in there and govern. Change the culture by thinking on terms of collaboration. It's the only key. We're facing a crisis right now all across the country. There's no money in government. There's a massive amount of debt. How do we pull ourselves out of this? Collaboration. I once heard a quote. Dr. Lamont Hill said, "Organized people will trump organized power every time." It lends truth to the collaboration theory. We can accomplish anything we need to accomplish in Delaware County if we work together. We need our businesses to work together with our community.